And we're live. Welcome back to another episode on the Windsor Wednesday show. Today, I have some really great guests that I want to share with you. Up top, we have Michael Abbott. Michael is a fourth-year concurrent education student and also co-president of SOS. Glad to have Michael on the show. Down below, we have Professor Tim Brunet, University of Windsor social media coordinator and also an instructor for many classes on campus. So we'll talk about that a bit later. And then we have Paige Coyne. Paige is a human kinetics alumnus, and she received her bachelor's, her master's, and she's completing a doctorate right now, and so many other great things that she's done at the University of Windsor. So I'm looking forward to our conversation. And to kick things off, we'll start with you, Professor Brunet. When you first started beginning teaching, what was something that you didn't expect, and how did you grow from that?
So I'll start very briefly by saying I've been teaching since I was 16. I started as a music teacher and then a hockey coach. And then I came to the university, and wow, what a difference it was. The challenge for developing curriculum is, that is designed to be modern, inclusive, and for a high participation system like the one we're in Ontario is not easily done. And just understanding the students, and probably the best advice that I got from any one of my colleagues was to ask students, how's it going? At the beginning, what do you want to get out of the course? How are things going? Giving them an opportunity to give feedback, giving them an opportunity to provide better readings, more modern readings, to modernize the readings, and to be more inclusive, especially when you're teaching something like interpersonal communication. You don't want to pull a document that's a research project out of the 80s. The system just wasn't very dynamic and diverse at that point. So that was the best advice, and students have just really helped me champion the revision of curriculum, especially the African Diaspora Youth Conference students, for example, in changing my vision of what can happen in the classroom.
So what would you say would be the biggest difference from teaching music and now teaching at the University of Windsor?
Well, teaching music, I had the benefit of teaching one-on-one. I knew the family. I saw them come in and go. And some of the families, I was quite young at the time, and they would just jokingly say, now that I see them in my later career, they would introduce me to their friends. And they would say, yes, Tim grew up with my kids. And because I was probably only 6 or 8 years older than them. And so that's been kind of the running joke. So having that opportunity to be an integral part of a family is really great. But when you get to the university and you're sitting behind a screen of 220 people, or you're in a class of 200 or even 30 people, students are really kind of icebergs unless you give them an opportunity to be a person in the network. I know you're definitely a character in the network of my teaching, Lyndon, because I see you doing, you're a character. People know who you are. You take time to reach out. So navigating that gap between the opportunities I had as a music teacher and the opportunities to get to know students, and finding ways that scale to do that and to allow students to build that peer network they need to be successful is critical.
Absolutely. And I know the students definitely appreciate that focus on them and the continued thing that you do to make sure that they feel like they're not just a number in the room. So I appreciate you sharing that, Professor Brunet. Now, Michael, being in your final year in concurrent education, looking back since when you first started the University of Windsor, what ways do you think you've grown?
Honestly, I think I've grown just by getting more involved on campus, building networks and connections, and meeting friends. It's crazy just how one opportunity kind of spirals into the next. If you just get involved in one organization or club, the connections that you make through that can just lead into so many more opportunities. So I think that's the easiest way to grow on campus. As well, just with my schoolwork, I've become more organized and learning how to time management and study. I found what studying techniques worked for me, and everyone's going to have unique study goals. So you kind of have to figure out what works for you. And just being more passionate and dedicated to my schoolwork, I think this really helps being in my later years. All my courses are more specific to what I actually am interested in, and it allows me to be more passionate about my schoolwork. And just like developing friendships and stuff really helps with studying, and like you can bounce ideas off each other.
For sure, and specifically with SOS, how did you grow from getting involved with that organization?
Yeah, so I started out just having an interest in teaching, and so I figured that the SOS sessions helped me out so much in first year that I just figured that I could see that as something I'd want to do. So I decided to apply and get involved in that and started tutoring. And just from there, I kind of fell in love with the organization and everything that it does, and just met so many amazing people throughout it that it's really just enhanced my university experience.
And Michael, I know in our conversation before you mentioned that you also teach outside of school. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so through the concurrent education program, I've had a few opportunities to be a student teacher, both at Riverside Secondary School and last year at Massey. So last year I was teaching grade 10 applied mathematics at Massey for the first semester, and it was honestly a great experience. I learned so much just through that like 5-week placement that it was great. So.
No, that's awesome. And do you think you're going to go into teaching down the road after you graduate?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think that like it's just something I could definitely see myself doing, and through that 5 weeks, it's something I could see myself doing the rest of my life. So
fantastic. I'm glad your program gave you that opportunity to get involved at different schools and actually teach while you're in university. That's fantastic. Thanks, Michael. So Paige, you've done many things at the University of Windsor, and I've seen all your awards and many contributions to different research papers. What would you say really sparked that interest in kinesiology, and specifically your focus on health and wellness?
So for me, it was really the first year I took a class literally called Health and Wellness. And I just really connected with the material. The professor that taught that course is actually my current advisor, Dr. Sarah Woodruff. She's fantastic. And she just really hit home with me that I always thought research was like, with a petri dish and kind of like you did in grade 11 and 12 bio and all those things. And to see that you could do community-based research and that you didn't have to sit in a lab, but you could go out and interact with people, that really sparked my interest. And she really made kind of a big impression on me. So I joined her lab at the end of my first year, or towards the end of my first year. And I've been there ever since. It's where I've done my master's and now my PhD. But yeah, I don't know. The best thing about HK is just like the family we have. It really is kind of an HK family. And I mean, kind of like you said, every award that anybody in the department gets, anytime anybody does something cool, the department's so good at like letting all the other students know, letting the faculty know. And then you get this flood of emails congratulating you, or if you're having a bad day and you reach out, they're always going to get back to you. And so you really just feel super supported. And I honestly can't say I thought I was going to spend 3 degrees here. My whole path changed completely, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
So Paige, was there anything in high school that really sparked your interest?
So I was always I always liked math. I always liked, science. So I took like all my bios, my chems, my physics, all of that. But I was always super athletic. And so originally going in, I really wanted to be like the sports reporter on TSN and doing like the evening news and things like that, but all sports related. But then I realized that doing something like this and being on TV isn't maybe, my forte and something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And then so kind of just fell into research kind of as a side thing. But yeah, definitely it was just like a good combination of what I did outside of high school, which was always sports, and then my interests in high school, which were science and math. So kin was just kind of like the perfect fit.
For sure. And would you say that it's important for students to get involved with some type of athletic group or extracurricular focused on athletics while they're in kinesiology?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it has to be specifically athletics related, although there's so many opportunities, especially if you have any interest in like physio, occupational therapy, chiropractics, things like that. The teams are always looking for those kind of positions. But kind of like Michael was saying, I think your university experience really just revolves around getting outside of the classroom. Yeah, the classroom's obviously super important, but I mean, I think the things you're going to look back on are the experiences you have. And so I think anytime you can connect in any way, shape, or form with another group of people, or meet new people, or join a new group or a club or an organization, or work with a faculty member, whatever you can do, anytime you get invested, I think that's where kind of the most fun comes out of.
Awesome. Thank you, Paige. Very well said. So, Professor Brunet, back to you. Throughout your time and as you continue to teach students, what are some values that you try to focus on teaching those students?
So I love that you asked me that question coming off the heels of what both Michael and Paige had to say. And if I were to frame what they had to say, they took their learning and brought it to the community. And so one of the values that I like to teach is something called the capability approach. And it centers around well-being. So something that I see Paige has picked up on since year one. And so I frame it in 4 pillars. And the first one is to be. And both of you talked about that being a character in the network, having affiliations. And we know that that is, Martha Nussbaum says, an architectonic capability. It helps us with our health outcomes. It helps us find work. It helps us to want to live. It helps us find fun. There's so much there that if all we're doing is teaching what's in the textbook, we're not, we're not fulfilling, in my vision of a university, we're not fulfilling our mandate. So everybody in this podcast is a community person. I can hear it in what they do and this whole podcast. I look very critically on proxies for understanding success at universities, which are our recruitment numbers are up, or we have diverse students, right? So I like students to say, well, who did I meet? What did I do? What kinds of public conversations was I able to have? And if I can instill that in a student, I feel like I've succeeded. If I can instill a student having the courage to raise their hand and ask a question, go to office hours. And by the way, a quick tip for students, if you're too afraid to go to office hours, I know many of you are, bring a friend. I often joke, bring a big friend, but you don't necessarily need to do that. But I've had some students who come in small groups just to ease that anxiety of meeting with an academic or a professor. And I'll leave you just with a few examples of students that I think have been really successful. I mean, I'll give you a shout out right away for doing this show and having these public conversations. I look at the African Diaspora Youth Conference team. I mean, they hosted over 300 people prior to the pandemic, people that wouldn't normally consider coming to a university. That's a big outcome. And we know it's going to have an impact not only on those students, but on society and their families and their affiliations. Noah Campbell's project with BlackBerry, developing processes for clean drinking water, taking what he learned in the classroom in computer science and in my class about the sustainability development goals. Another student went out to do work about the migrant worker project. She's not just teaching them English, so Steph went out there and she taught them a lot more than English. Just last one, I think of another student like Katrina Bonham, who's our kind of our pick for the next Rhodes Scholar here at the University of Windsor for her application, and just supporting students who just lay it out on the line, and they affiliate with people, they get things happening in the community, and they do fail, and they do learn from failure, and they come out really to be quite impressive citizens. So that's my goal.
It's a great goal, and we can all hear and see your impact that you're having on students and really allowing them to be and get involved. So I appreciate you sharing that. So Michael, I want to talk specifically about SOS, your experience teaching. What are some opportunities with SOS that students can get involved with?
Yeah, so SOS is a student-run nonprofit organization and we raise money, raise marks, and raise roofs. So students can kind of get involved in any one of those pillars. So we hold 3-hour exam aid review sessions before midterms and final exams. So these are led by student volunteers. So if you want to get involved as a tutor, you can do that. As well, we have our take-home packages and detailed notes that go along with these sessions. So the volunteers also have the opportunity to go on the outreach trips that are raised, that are funded by the money that is donated through these sessions. Right now, we're doing it online internship program rather than actual trips because of COVID. However, there's still lots of opportunity involved that way. We have over 200 volunteers on campus, which is just a huge amount. They all do an amazing job, so there's lots of opportunities to get involved through SOS. I'd recommend starting out just by attending an exam aid session, seeing what we're all about. There's lots going on right now for the midterms, and the finals will be coming up throughout final season. Just stay tuned to our Instagram page at Windsor SOS for more information on those, as well as learning more about getting involved in volunteering. And if you want to sign up for a session, you can check us out at windsor.soscampus.com.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Michael. And yes, for those interested in getting involved with teaching, or they need those support systems throughout their time studying, please visit, so I'll put it up on the screen here, windsor.soscampus.com for more information. And Paige, going down to you, we talked a little bit about how you're a co-author to a few different research papers and articles. What skills do you think students can gain from completing research throughout their studies?
I mean, there's a whole host of skills that you can learn, but I think probably some of the biggest ones I learned was both how to work independently, but also in a team, and how those two things interact, right? We talk a lot of times about like, oh, you need to be independent, but oh, you need to work in a group, but those interact a lot more than we think. And so knowing how to get your part of something done while also working in a bigger team, I think is something that you can learn. Things like critical thinking and problem solving and analyzing things, just really big skills that if you were to ask any kind of academic institution, especially a university, what do they hope students have at the end? Being able to critically think, being able to problem solve, because those are skills that apply to any job, any field, doesn't matter what you're doing. So that's definitely a skill you learn. I also think you're going to learn stuff like communication. You're going to get the opportunity to present at conferences potentially, whether it be at a poster, whether it be an actual presentation. And then you're also going to get to work on your written skills, right? I mean, we all have papers, we all submit, especially in kind of COVID and online learning. I think everybody has a lot more assignments. And so it's only going to refine your writing skills. So yeah, I think there's so many skills. But I think the biggest thing I ever learned from research just was, do I like it or do I not? And I tell anybody that wants to get involved in research, just try it. And it's okay if you don't like it, right? There's some people that are gonna fall in love with it, and there's others that don't. But it's one thing you can either check off the list and say, yep, that's the path I want to take, or you can say, no, not for me, right? So I think anytime you can do that and kind of narrow down what you want to do with your life is a good thing.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Paige. Yeah. And to go to our favorite question of the day, we ask this on every show, is why are you UWinProud? Well, how do you start, Michael?
All right. So for me, I think that UWindsor is just like an amazing school and has so many opportunities. There's like just so many ways you can get involved on campus throughout your undergrad and even after that. It's just really great to see that anyone who wants to get involved can. As well, like just being a science student, I know that there's a very small student to faculty ratio, so it's very easy to connect with your prof. Personally, I've even like ended up coaching in my hometown, coaching hockey with one of my professors. Just because it's such a small ratio of students, you can actually really build those connections and learn about your prof and kind of help out that way. Also, being from a small town, I like that it's a smaller campus. I came from a high school with 212 students, so having a smaller campus where you can actually recognize students in your class really helps out, and it just really builds personal connections easily.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michael. Great for sharing that. Thank you. And to go to Professor Brunet, why would you say you're proud to be a staff member, a faculty member at the University of Windsor?
Well, I think that UWindsor is a great school, and has so many opportunities. There's like just so many ways you can get involved on campus. There's like just so many ways you can get involved in research. Well, the first thing I would say is how incredibly fortunate we are to have a university in the city of Windsor, or the region of Windsor, Essex County. And I look back to that. My parents, who were both first-gen students, had the opportunity in their own hometown to go to a university that completely changed the outlook of both their families and their future generation. Just as a quick story, I remember meeting up a student who came up to me and said, "Do you remember me?" And I gave him a quick advising session. And I used a lot of the advice that I had learned in my PhD as a higher ed student. And he said, "You changed my life. You knew exactly what I needed to do. That one meeting." And what makes me proud is that we have this transformative opportunity here in this city. Not there are a whole slew of cities that would love to have a university like this in their town. And we have it. And I'm just very proud of the people who took the initiative to really make this place what it is today, and to allow students like Michael and Paige to be community members and thrive.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Paige, I'm curious to know, why are you proud to be a Lancer?
I think if I probably had to sum it up in 2 words, it would be relationships and opportunity. I think we are kind of that like sweet spot of, we're not this super big university, we're not this super small university. We combine research and teaching, and there's not, an emphasis on one and the other one lacks. Like we have this really good kind of vibe and combination going, where I just think the opportunities that you can get from coming and doing your degree here are so big. And then the relationships. I mean, the reason I picked Windsor to start with, and the HK program specifically, I applied to 3 or 4, got into all of them, and I didn't even really hesitate to pick. After I had done the tours, I just knew this is where I needed to be. And I felt that genuine connection with people, with other students, with professors on campus, and just felt like they cared about me and felt supported. And that was something really important to me. And I think, I can obviously kind of speak for our faculty, but I've seen it elsewhere. I mean, I've gotten to work with people in the CTL. I've gotten to work with people in other departments. And I just think like the mutual respect and the relationships that are built here are pretty special. And kind of like Tim said, like it doesn't happen everywhere. And so I think we kind of get seen a little bit as an underdog compared to some of the bigger schools in Canada. But I think if you talk to anybody that actually comes here, they can't help but be proud.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paige. What a great way to wrap up our conversation today. And I want to say thank you to the guests that are joining us for joining us on, it could be their lunch break, but they're taking the time to help inspire those watching and provide advice to incoming students that are considering, or even students that are on campus and are looking for advice on what steps they should take as they continue to study at UWindsor. So thank you for joining me, and those watching, we'll see you next week.